Okay, cool. So I'll just add my screen here. I will show you. Okay. So guys, are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, yes.
Cool, cool. Okay. So today's session is more about. In the last session we had seen how JavaScript is written and what are the basic intent of writing JavaScript, how the basic flow is written, how event binding is done, and how the functions are written, and XYZ stuff. But just moving ahead with today's session, I would first likely to tell you that please don't write any code. Just have a look of what I'm coding, because all the code would be given to you. I'll upload it into my GitHub account and I'll give you the link so that you can anyways download it. The only thing you should be worrying about is, if at all things are not unclear to you, please raise to me then and there. That would help even me to make you guys understand the stuff in much more better fashion. And moving ahead, so today's session is more about advanced JavaScript, and it is very much important because all the frameworks you must be hearing about Angular, like in about JavaScript, like Angular JS or Angular 2 or React, Redux, or Node.js apps, like writing servers into JavaScript. All these things have one thing in common, and that is nothing but design patterns. So everything works on design patterns. Everything, every damn thing which you write inside these new frameworks, right? Uh, this is from the learning perspective. At the same time, if at all you guys are really planning to boom your career, yeah. So if you guys are really planning to boom your career with in JavaScript or in IT like Raj, it why I would say don't go ahead with any of the frameworks until and unless you are much more thorough with JavaScript is. If at all you don't know this, the base of any of the frameworks is nothing but JavaScript. And if you don't know this, it is really worthless learning the stuff ahead. The reason being, if at all you are really planning out for good companies to work with, like investment banks or something like that, at that point of time, these guys would only drill you on JavaScript, even if the requirement is for Angular JS or React. They'll not even care whether you guys know the framework, because framework is something which any Tom, Dick, and Harry can learn. But if at all you don't know how to write the basic JavaScript, it would be much more difficult. So that is the reason these sessions are much more important than my sessions which I take on the frameworks. And over there, I assume people knowing JavaScript. Okay. So today's session, as you guys is about design patterns in JavaScript. It is completely like how many design patterns I can make you guys learn. So one more thing is, in JavaScript, if you know, it is not a structured language like how you have heard about Java or .NET. Like Ruchi, you work on .NET. So .NET is like completely structured language. There are defined classes. There are defined ways how you have to inherit your code, and the defined way wherein inheritance is done, defined way how the classes are created, defined way how objects are created, and that is why it is called a structured language. But when it boils down to JavaScript, it is never like that. Okay, so JavaScript is first of all, it is a scripting language. It is not a programming language as such, having a lot of capabilities. But there are some ways wherein you can make your JavaScript code also behave in such a way that it may follow object oriented concepts, and it follows object oriented concepts. So that is what we are going to look today. Okay, so moving ahead, I am assuming that you guys are having a base idea of what is object oriented programming is all about. Like for example, when you say oops, OOP, so it is nothing but object oriented programming. There are a lot of properties in oops which really comes in handy, are nothing but class, Okay, now if you ask me what is a class, then class can be any real world entity. Any real world entity. Now what is object? So objects are nothing but, you know, any instance of a class. Like for example, if at all I say I want to write a program on a car, okay, so car is a real world entity for me, and car can behave as class. Now a car can have a lot of properties, right? A car can have a lot of properties, like for example, a car can be red in color. It can have 17 inches of wheels, or it can have chrome windows, or you can say power windows. So all this definition, right, all this knowledge of how this particular car is different from the rest of the things, rest of the properties, it is defined in this particular class. At the same, and these particular things are called data members of the class. Now red is nothing but a color. Okay, now color of the class. Now for example, 17 inches wheel is nothing going to be the wheel property of the class. Power windows is going to be like what kind of window type, you can say window type. And at the same time I can say wheel type. In the same way, there is one more thing that is called as member functions. Now what can be probable member functions of a class? So member functions of a class are nothing but which define some of the actions on this real world entity. Like for example, a car can a car can be drive. So drive is a member function inside which you can write the code which makes some difference to this particular class. A class can drift, maybe, you know, a car can drift. Definitely, if at all code it goes. So now there can be n number of things which you can define. So these are nothing but the member functions of the class. These are nothing but the data members of the class, and this is nothing but, and this particular thing is, so no, don't go via, like the way I'm writing the code is just for you guys to make understand what are classes. Okay, now supposingly if my class is created, I want an object for this particular class. I can just say where, you know, red car, maybe. I can just say new car, this particular variable, and I would just say okay. Now this data members can also be like set color. This set color can be like anything. I will just pass a color over here. I'll get this dot color. Now this dot color is nothing but the reference to this particular data member called color, and I'll assign it to you, so that the red color would be applied to this particular class. So now I want to create a red color car. So I am just instantiating it from a car, and as I say, these are nothing but the public interface of this particular class. So that means data members can be accessed via dot property. So when I say red car dot set color, now set color is going to be nothing but, I'll just pass it a red. So this is nothing but object creation. This is nothing but object creation, and this is nothing but accessing data members of the class. Okay, so this is what all about classes and objects. This is the basic flow of object oriented programming. I'm not really explaining you guys with respect to JavaScript. It is with respect to the conceptual understanding. In the same way, there are a hell lot of things, like there is inheritance. Like for example, there can be a person There can be a person class. Person class can have profession. It can have profession. Now again, there is a doctor class. Okay, it might have it its specialization. He can be an heart doctor, or he can be a renal doctor, he can be an orthopedic, etc., etc., etc. But doctor is also inherited, like our doctor should also have something called profession, which he will equate it to something like MBBS. He is MBBS doctor. So that means I can say person is nothing but, person is nothing but the parent class, and doctor is nothing but the child class. That means all the properties of the parents are going to be existing into this child class as well. So this is nothing but inheritance, which I'm sure you guys must be knowing. But even in JavaScript, inheritance is very much possible. There is a lot of like polymorphism and data overriding, everything, overloading and overriding everything. So this is the basic gist of object oriented programming, which we might look going ahead. Okay, so now when before going ahead, like I will start with some design pattern. So when I say pattern, so this is not, it is not a source of truth for you guys. Okay, so these are nothing but different ways to achieve a same thing, and this is a methodology which you might develop when you start coding into JavaScript. But my responsibility for as of now is now to make you guys aware to these kind of design patterns, so that things would be much more clearer when you guys would really intend to start with working with newer what you'd say JavaScript frameworks. Okay, so as of now, what I've done is I have just created HTML over here, so that I just need an HTML just to render my JavaScript, because I want my JavaScript to be working on my browser. Okay, I just created HTML, and then what I'll do is I'll just go and creating this JS files, the JS code with respective titles. So, and I'll, at the end of the day, I just upload the code to the GitHub, and you guys would be free to download it for your reference. Maybe next time, if at all you really want these things to be clear, you can directly download the code, and it would be much more simpler for you guys to know. So what I'm doing is I've just created one more JS file over here, which I have referenced it in my script tag. This is nothing but a script tag, and there is a src source. And now source is nothing but I'm just importing this particular creational pattern JS here. So just let me see whether everything is correct. I'll just put an alert over here, so that I would be sure that my JS is loading. Okay, I'll just put a load over here. Yes, it is loading correctly. Cool. So now what I've done is now the first topic which we are going to cover is nothing but the creational patterns. So when I say what creational patterns is the way how objects are really created into JavaScript. Okay, so let me just run down my notes. I've already done. Cool. Okay, so first of all, let me just create a normal object here. Okay, so when I say I've written this kind of a statement over here, this is nothing but the simplest way how you can create a JavaScript object. So this is like, I'll just comment it one. So this is my first way how I can create my JavaScript object. So this really talks about creational patterns in JavaScript. So this is nothing but the JavaScript, what you can say, it is just creating a simple JavaScript object. So if I just put an console.log, and I just say type of obj, let me see what it gives. You can see it gives me nothing but an object. So this is the object literal way. It is an object literal, which wherein we have to just equate a variable to an empty object. That is something, an empty curly braces open and close, that defines an object. How to insert properties, key value pairs into this object? It is very much simple. Okay, what you can do is you can directly start writing it. Like first, like for example, I want to create an object for a person. A person might have a first name and a last name. I can just write first name colon, and then I'll just write Gaurav. I'll just put a comma here, and then I'll just write last name, and last name is nothing but Manjrekar. If you can see, I'll just put a console.log, so at least for you guys to see. So when I say obj, and I can just see here, you can see I'm able to see this particular as an object, and there is nothing but first name and last name over here. And if at all you want to access any of the properties of this particular object, you should always do it with a dot operator. So when I want to access the first name of this particular object, I'll just put a dot, and I'll just say first name. When I refresh it, it is nothing but it is accessing Gaurang. Maybe I can also try with last name. If I can see, it is there, and it is also nothing but Gaurang. There is one more way wherein you can write the same object pattern, is nothing but, okay, I'll just write it 2 over here, and it would be nothing but where obj, it is nothing but obj1, and it is not going to be like this. And then I would just say obj1 dot first name. This is the way how you are accessing the properties also, and you can also set it to something like Gaurang, you know. And in the same way, I'll just put it one object1, and you can also set it to something else like magrekar. Okay, and now I'll just, you know, I'll just console.log over here, and then I will just print obj1. Let me see what it prints. If you can see, it is again having the same output what I had done it before. So this is nothing but, you can directly initialize your object with key value, how you're done in number one. Second thing, you can directly use uh, dot operator, and you can equate it to a value, and you can also access it via dot value. Maybe I can nothing but last name. If you can see, you can, okay, so I have written it in a wrong way, so it is nothing but last name. You can see, yes, there is nothing but I'm getting the value. So these are first two ways wherein you can create object creational patterns. Let's move on to the third one, and that is again very much simple. If you can say obj, I'll just use obj2 here. I'll put an object. I'll just copy these things so that you don't waste time in writing the stuff. Okay, I'll just put a 2. In the same way how you're writing dot operator, you can also enclose this into a square bracket and then make this as a string. The same way, it'll behave again in the same way. You can just make it a string over here, and again if I just go and, you know, console.log, and I'll say obj2, and if you can see, if you run, again I'm getting the same output here. So what will happen if at all you are not writing it into code? It will happen that JavaScript compiler will mistake this. It'll think that this is nothing but a variable. It will start finding the definition for this variable, and definitely first name variable doesn't exist in this JavaScript. It will throw an error. So if I just refresh it, it will say there is a reference error for first name is not defined. So that is the reason we don't want JavaScript behavior, a compiler to, you know, mistaken this for being a variable. Actually, this is nothing but a property name of that particular object, and this is how things are very much done. Moving ahead, I'll go ahead. There is one more thing, like, you know, okay. So there's one more thing, like fourth. If you can see over here, as I had told you before, there is something called object which is a global object in any of the HTML file, any of the HTML file. Okay, so this object also defines a global object which is there floating throughout their application. It also, it has something called as defined properties, which is its def- uh, this is nothing but something which you can directly access to create variables. This is nothing but a prototype method of this particular object, which defines the properties on an object which it is getting created. So how it can be possible is, you have to just write, like, if I say object, dot nothing but define property, the way it is given over here, and then this defined property, if you can say, it is actually, it is a function. So if you can say, if you can see, like, type of object, object dot define properties, you can see it is nothing but a function. So that's the reason I'm instantiating this function. Now this object is actually, it is going to be something like, you can just give a reference of an object. Like, first of all, I'll just create obj3 over here. Okay, now I want to create some properties inside this particular object using defined properties. So I can just copy this over here, object3, and then I can say what should be the key, first key, and I will say first name, and then there should be an object, and which would be having a key called value, and that value is going to be the value of the first name, and that is nothing but Gaurav. Okay, and then if I just console.log it out over here, and I'll just log obj3. Okay, line number 23, it is giving me an error. Okay, so I'll just remove these things out. Okay, so if you can see, now I am creating an object using object.define property, and not with any of the three things which I have given above. I'm creating it using define property, and you can see it is first name and the last name. Last name is something, again, I can create, you can create the same using the same thing. If you'll just copy this particular maybe thing. Okay, and I'll say, last name is value is nothing but Manjrekar, and I'll refresh this. You can see now I am creating or define properties using last first name and the last name. Cool. So that is one more thing. So now if you can see, I have to repeat this statement again. So there is one more thing which I can do. I'll write it 5. I'll just use obj4 as my reference, and then I would say there is something called, if you can come here over here, there is something called, object dot define properties. So again, this is nothing but a function. So if at all I want to define various key value pair at once using defined properties, I can use it by using defined properties. So if you can say object dot define, TIES, define properties. Now again, define properties is nothing but, what you can say, define properties is nothing but a function, and this particular define properties would be having, my first thing would be nothing, my obj, I want to define properties on object 4, and then what I really want to do, like for example, I can say over here is first name is Gaurang, and I can say my last name equals to Manjrekar, and I'll just put a semicolon here, and I'll just say console.log obj4. I'll just remove this stuff out here. I don't want to do it. Okay, so there is a type error at line number 30. So it says must be an object property description. Okay, okay. So age. So now let me see. My first name property description should be an object. Let me just see it. I'm just following whatever things are there written over here. Okay, okay. So now this object again would be having something called value, and let me see. Right, what Gorang. Let me just see whether it is working. Yes, it is working very much fine. I can just say value, and this is nothing but one's record. And if I just see it, if you can see now, again I am having the same output over here using something called defined properties. Okay, moving ahead, now we have till now seen 5 ways of creating an object into JavaScript. Let me show you the 6th way again, and that is much more simpler way. I'll just create it like a var object dot 5. There is something again called as object dot create. Now object create is again nothing but a I can say object, it is a function, so I can create a function. Now I want to create a function like of what type function should I create. So I'll just give, okay, I want to create a function, maybe of, I'll just give a blank object, and what values I want it to be, I want to create with it is nothing but again the same thing. I just want to say it as first name. Okay, so first name is again going to be value. Okay, and it is nothing but Gaurav. In the same way, I just come down over here. I'll also write something called last name. Last name is again going to be something called value, and I is going to be Manjrekar. Okay, and at the end of the day, I'll just go and console.log nothing but obj5. Let me see what output I get. I get a syntax error, and why is that so? It is line number 42. Okay, this is a problem. So you can see I just misspelled the value. So you can see again I'm creating an object, and I'm creating it via by first name and last name. It is almost the same. I can also, so now so I'll just write down here creating from empty object. So you can see you're creating an object out of an empty object. Now for example, if at all I want to create an object, creating from existing object, I'll just create an existing object, temp object, temp obj, and I'll just start with writing first name equals to Rang, and not equals to last name is equals to Manjrekar. So now I want to create an object from this again. So what I can do is I can just say where obj6. I'll just move this particular, I'll just comment it out, maybe I'll need it again. I'll say object.6, I'll say object.create. Now instead of empty object, I'll give this particular temp object, and let's see what happens. Okay, So if you can see, I have not put any console over here. Console.log obj. Okay, so if you can see over here, it is creating an object. Okay, whatever things are there, and it is then uh, doing the same thing. Okay, you can create, you are just creating this particular object using a create method. So I guess this is much more clear to you guys. So is there any doubt regarding the creational patterns, guys? It's much more clear, right? Okay. Okay, just give me a minute. Let me see if I have missed out something. Okay. Okay, so now let me do one more thing over here. Let me see. Let me just write down the code. If at all, for example, I want to do something like it, I want to explicitly say that I want to change my first name to maybe Nikki. What I can do is I can just go here and I can just console.log console.log, and that's going to be obj6. Okay, super. Right, so now if you can see what really happens over here is, if you can see, I have created a create object, you know. Now let me just remove this stuff out so that you can have the things for your reference. Okay, I'll just put a console, maybe just a minute. Console.log obj6. When you create an object, cool, correct. So now if you can see over here, guys, I have created a template object, a create object using a temp object. But when I just print this particular obj6, you can see I get a, I get an empty object over here. So why do I get empty object? Okay, and where are the properties which are previously defined over here? Now for example, now here where the magic happens, I am not getting these particular values. But at the same time, if you can see on object.6, if I try and access first name, let me see, I should get the value, right? What do you guys think? Should I get first name from over here, as I am seeing a blank object here? What do you think? Guys, this was a question for you. Just guess anything, I don't mind if at all it is wrong. Because when I just, when I refresh this stuff, you can see this object is blank, but I'm creating it from a temp object which is already having some key values pair.
I
So
guess if we're accessing it through dot and then first name, it should display the first name. I mean, it should display at least Varan.
but why would it do? Because it is nothing but a blank object, right? You can see there is no key value pairs defined here.
Yeah,
So
but then we are passing, it is getting values through
right,
object.
right, so the thing is, logically, Ruchi, you are absolutely right. Okay, but it is very much important for you to understand from where this value came from. Because because when I just, console.log out the object, my object is having nothing inside it. It is done. But if you see, there is something called proto over here, and it is nothing but an object. When I open this stuff, you know, I can see my first name and last name. So how is JavaScript basically working is, firstly it will go and find out at the global level whether it has that particular property which I am accessing, yes or no. If at all the answer is yes, it will print that value. If not, it will go into its prototype object and then it will try searching for the value. If it gets the value, well then enough. If at all it is not getting, it will again go into this proto. Okay, so that is it. So if at all, so when I say Gaurang, this dot first name, when I say this dot first name, what is happening is it is first finding whether that object is having its own property called first name. If at all it is not present, then go and find out, take the value from the prototype itself. And if at all it is not even there at this level, go and find out at this level, until the point you get the prototype. So this is the last point wherein the prototype chain works. So if at all there is no properties, if at all you can access like dd, it is not even present at the first level, not even at the second level, not even at the third level, it will give me undefined. This is the way how it works. If I go and say first name, now it is working, because on the first prototype level you got this value. Now for example, I want to override this first name, this first name of this particular temp object. How I can do is, I can just go, I'll just uh, I'll just keep this thing like that only, and I'll just write it overriding the value, so that you guys can access it later. I'll just use, object 7, and then this particular temp object, what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to say it should be, I want to update my first name, I want to override it. How can I do it? Overriding is nothing but a first name, it has an object which should in turn have a value, and that value should be nothing but your first name. Now here I say it is nothing but Nikita, for example, and I just want to print out my object 7. Let us see how it looks like first of all. Okay, if you can see, now I am having the first property which I have defined over here as its own property. And if you open this proto, you will get all the properties of temp object there. So you can see the first name also lies over at this level and also in the prototype level. So what is the first principle of JavaScript object, object properties, is, if at all the object, the compiler of the JavaScript gets the value at the first level itself, it will not go to its prototype level to even access the value. So now when I say something called, first when I'll say something called first name, it will not access, it will first go and look at the basic level. Okay, is it there? If yes, it will not even bother to go and look at the prototype level. So when I say first name, it should be Nikita and not Gaurang. This is the way how I'm overriding the value, but that doesn't mean that value doesn't, it is not present in the object. Is it clear, guys, what I'm really trying to make you understand? Raj? Okay, so first of all, I would like to make you guys understand that object.create is a pattern by which you can create a prototype object. So now what is a prototype object actually? The prototype is nothing but it is there present for each and every object which you create. So if you go and console.log an object, you can see there is always a prototype object there. In JavaScript, whenever you create an object in any of which ways which I have shown to you, you'll always see a prototype property there, and it has to be there. So why prototype is useful? It is, for now we can just say that prototype is just used for adding properties to the JavaScript object. This is what we have learned up till now. So what prototype is really useful and how the things are going to be molded ahead, we can go and see in the rest of the design patterns which we are going to see now. So I believe creational database object patterns is much more clear to you guys, right? So I'll move on to the next, and that is nothing but a constructor pattern. I'll just close this file. I'll go to my this thing. I'll say new file. I'll say uh, constructor pattern dot js. So it is super constructor pattern dot js. I'll just go into my so I'll first see whether I don't have any console.logs here. Cool, I don't have it. I'll just do this thing over here, and I'll just go to my script tag. I'll just add my script here again. Constructor pattern.js. What I'll do is I'll just go and I'll just put an alert over here just to make sure whether things are really working great for me or not. Okay, test. If I just refresh it, I can say okay, it is test. So I can just start writing my code over here. So my constructor creational pattern is done. I'm just closing these things off. Now this is nothing but a constructional pattern. Okay. Let me just give you an example like what are. So first of all, I would like to hear from you guys, what is a constructor? What is a basic example of a constructor?
Constructor where the class name mean it's same as the object name.
So is that the only thing which a constructor has the speciality of, or is it required to do some other stuff also?
Is not very clear with constructor basic actually.
No problem. So okay, so I'll just make you understand what is a constructor. Okay, so constructor is nothing but a special type of a function, and usually it has the name as that of the class itself, but that particular function is really called at the moment the particular class is instantiated. And why this constructor is really taken is written is because it is usually used for initializing the data members of your classes. It is used for initialization purpose. So even in JavaScript, we are going to write a constructoral pattern wherein we would use a function to initialize the first thing, the basic data members of the class. Okay, so let me just give you an example. So first of all, I would like to understand, is constructor, the basic responsibility of the constructor is nothing but initialization. So Raj, are you with me? Like, are you understanding it clearly, right? Yeah. Okay. 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 So just moving ahead, what I'll do is I'm going to write, I'm going to create a class called person, and that person should be having something called as first name as last name, the way we have written before. And let's see how things work. Let me see. So I will just first write a variable called person, and that person should be equated to some function, and this function you know would be having something called first name and last name. Okay, now this is going to be like this dot first name. I am creating first data member of my class, which is nothing but first name. Now the first name should always be equated to this particular function. This dot last name is again my other second data members, and it is going to be something like last name. So if you can see what function I am writing is, I am going to make this function behave as a constructor of my class, and this function and this variable is going to be having a reference to a function which is going to behave as a class as well. So how to make that thing happen and how to really go about with the task is nothing but, let me go ahead and let me go ahead and also tell something called this dot, you know let me not add it. I'm just adding my data members, but the member functions are something which I'm not adding as of now. What I'll do is I'll just create an object called Gorang, and I'll just use a new keyword over here, and it would be preceded by the name of the function. So name of the function is nothing but this particular person. If you can see now that this first person, it accepts two arguments, that is nothing but first name and last name. So I'll just provide my first name and last name. If you can see Gaurang, and the second is nothing but Manjrekar. Okay, and now what I'll do is I'll just console.log, you know Gaurang over here. Let me see what does it come out to be on the screen. If you can see now, it there is a person object which is going to be equated to first name and last name. It is exactly the same thing which we were trying to achieve in our creational pattern, but this is nothing but creating the same object using a constructoral pattern, and that is nothing but by using a new keyword onto a function. This particular part makes this function behave as a constructor of the class person. Okay, now that means, what does that mean? If at all I go and I'll say Aman, maybe I'll say new dot person, and I can say Aman, and I can say second name as Kulkarni. Cool. And if I go and say this as Aman, reference person, okay, I've missed spelling mistake. If I refresh this, you can see there is Aman, and this is nothing but the Kulkarni object. So these are nothing but the two objects which I am created. But are these, you know, are these two objects are really same? So what I can do is I can just try to see the equality of this particular object. You know, let me see. It will give me false. Why it will give me false is because I am trying to create two different instances from a person class. So these two, Gaurang and Aman, would be given two different, there would be allocated a memory inside a memory block, and both the object would be getting two different memory locations to be allocated. That means these are two different objects and not the same. This is what I'm trying to say. Like for example, if I say Aman dot last name is going to be different from Gaurang dot last name. Gaurang dot last name, if you can see, those two things are going to be different. That means these two are holding two different values. Okay, so now let me try one thing, and that is nothing but adding a data member of it. So I'll say this dot, say name. I'm adding a member function, for example, and I'm just writing a function over here. And here I'm just going to say console.log. I'll say, hey there, I am what this dot first name, and I'll just say something like space and this dot last name. Cool. And what I'll do is I'll just go out here and say console.log, and I'll say Gaurang dot say name, and I'll also try to console.log out, Aman dot say name. Okay, so say name, I need to call that function. I cannot just print it. Okay, so you can see I am just getting this particular message from my first thing, and that is nothing but you know Oh god, oh god. Okay. So that is nothing but एक minute, just minute console dots. Okay, I'm using it. Rather than that, I'll just return it over here. Retu retu rn. Okay, so now it will be clear. Ret- Okay, so now you can see my console.log says that hey there, I am Gaurang. Hey there, I am Ampane. This is way how I am asking. I'm created a member function. So the person member has a special capability of saying the name out, of greeting the thing. I'll say greet. I'll just change the name. It looks much more. Yeah. So for greet, but let me see whether these two are the same or not. So if I just go into my console.log and I'll just say, let me tell me is Gaurang.greet is equals to Aman.greet, and the answer would be false. So what does that mean? That means that every time this particular new person is instantiated, there would be new block for this function is going to be, to be allocated in the memory heap, JavaScript heap of the browser. But I really don't want to do that, because if tomorrow I have employee, like for example I'm creating an employee class and I have almost 4 lakh employees in my company, am I going to create a new memory location for this particular function reference? So just to make optimize this particular thing, I would add this you know particular data member into my prototype of this particular person. That is nothing but person.prototype. How to do it? It is just simple. If you can just go to person, you can just write prototype. Okay, and then you can just say greet, and this particular greet is, it is nothing going to be the same function which I'm trying to tell you guys. So I'll just cut this particular greet out from here, and then I'll just put it over here. So before even going and seeing what the thing is, let me just see what does Gaurang and Aman function look as of now. If I say Aman, let me just refresh it. If you can see now, the only it has first name and last name as its own property, if you can see, but there is one more data member which is called as greet. If you can open it, it is inside its prototype. You can see it is inside its prototype. Earlier it was there on this level itself. That means every time these particular objects were created, a new memory allocation for that function is done inside JavaScript heap. But I really don't wanted to do that. So how I can do is, I have just created a prototype function that is greet. So now I can also access a greet function on my object. So how it is going to work is, it will start for hunting the greet method at the first level itself. Now he will not be able to get the greet method at the first level. Rather, my JavaScript object will try to find the same greet method in the prototype object of that particular object, and that is why I'll be able to get these particular options ready for me. But now my ultimate result was to just check whether my greet objects are same or not. If I just say Aman, earlier it was not same. Let me see whether I have achieved the optimization of my objects. So if you can see now, it is nothing but true. So that means now any object, how many of how so whatsoever objects you keep creating over here, this greet object is going to be initialized only once, and the reference of that function would be used in every of the objects. And that is the second most important thing which you should understand, is why prototype is really necessary. When you inject the properties into prototype, it it doesn't, and you create multiple instances of an object, you will not be able to, you are optimizing your JavaScript object. You cannot just go and put down all your data property into this. For now it was very much simple for me to just put down this dot greet at this particular time, at this particular page. But if you just put down over here, you can see now there would be no two functions which would be allocated having memory. Other than that, it would just use the same reference to all the person object which I'm creating. Even at the same time, if I create some other object, it will be having the same thing. So this is all about the constructoral pattern. I would like to hear from you guys. Did you guys understand what I was trying to tell you guys?
Yes.
uh cool. So Raj, is it clear? Cool. So I'll keep this thing as is so that I can push the code later into GitHub. Moving ahead, the next pattern is, it is nothing but inheritance pattern. So it is nothing but inheritance. So what I'll do is I'll just again create a JS. I'll face is inheritance dot JS. I create something called inheritance. I'll just go here. I'll just copy this particular line of code and I'll just put this in inheritance.js. I'll just put an alert to see whether things are really working for me. Okay. Okay. I have just messed with. Okay. I'll just. Okay, so now I've just created my name, and if I just. Okay, so now it is creating. So I'll just remove this, uh, delete this particular file, and I can use this. Cool. So now what I'm going to teach you guys is nothing but the inheritance pattern. So you guys don't need a break or something like, right?
It's okay.
Okay, let's just move on. So what I am really, trying to implement over here is I'm going to create a class called beverage. Okay, and that beverage is going to have some local properties of its, like it would be having something called a name and something like temperature, and it would be again it would be having a data member called drink. Okay, and then I would start creating a child object, and this beverage is nothing, it is going to be my parent object. And then I would be creating a different object called coffee, and this coffee would be, inheriting all the properties of the beverage, because coffee is also nothing but a beverage. So beverage is going to be the parent class and coffee is going to be the child class. With all the properties of the beverage, the coffee should also have its own property called type. Like for example, coffee can be of type espresso or mocha or anything else. At the same time, I am going to create a sip, a member function also for the coffee called sip, which would just console.log that I am sipping a coffee of some type. And then we will see how the inheritance, we have to write inheritance in this particular example. Let me just put down my laptop on charger. Okay, cool. So let me just create my base class, and that is nothing but nothing but nothing but beverage. Okay, so now this beverage is nothing going to be, it is going to be a function, and this function is going to be accepting something called name and temperature. It would be having its own property called this dot name, which would be equated to this dot name. There is something called this dot temperature, which would be nothing but the temperature. Okay, at the same time it would be having something else like called this dot drink, and this dot drink is nothing going to be a function, and this function will just console.log. Okay, and it will just say drinking this dot name, and this is, I'll just remember the temperature. Okay, so this is quite straightforward. I'm just console.logging out these things. Moving ahead, I'll just going to create a, just a second. Okay, so over here I'll just create something, a base class called coffee, and this particular coffee is going to be having a type. So coffee can be of any damn type. Okay, I'll say this dot, you know, this dot type is equals to nothing but the type, but at the same time it would be having something like sip, and it would be nothing but a function, and that particular function would be console.log, you know, I can say sipping this dot type. Okay, and then at the end of the day I'll just create an object called mocha, and mocha would be of type coffee. I'll just type coffee, and it will just pass the type called, it is nothing but mocha, and I'll just console dot log out mocha here. So this is how I've written in two class. I just refresh it. If you can see, I have only got sip and type and nothing else. Because the inheritance has not yet done. So first of all, I would really like you guys to understand that moving ahead, if you can see, now even my member function, there are nothing but the function is also under its own property. So every time anyone just uses, if anyone creates a new data property, like new instantiate this coffee by using espresso or something like that, or iced tea or something like that, at that particular time it would be very difficult. And just a second, I guess this guy has just been disconnected. Let me just add him. Give me a minute. Hello.
Yeah, hi Gaurav. My call got disconnected actually.
Okay, I'll just add Raj. So till what point did you missed?
When you had started with the inheritance pattern, at that time it got disconnected.
Oh god. Okay, fine. I'll make you understand again. Uh, Raj, am I clear? Like, are you able to listen to me? I'll share my screen. Cool. Okay. Okay. So are you guys able to see my screen, right?
I'm not able to see the screen.
Uh, I have already shared it, Ruchi.
Okay. Actually, I'm not able to see the screen. I guess there's network problem. I guess. So getting disconnected and really slow.
Okay. So I'll just drop you off, and I'll again add you. Maybe that would help. Let me see. Just a minute, Raj. Let me try to just get in touch with her.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So is it done? Hello. 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 Okay. So is there any scope wherein you can? So I've just because I'm okay. 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 So let's do one thing. Anyways, any which ways, I'm recording the stuff out, so I can pass the thing to you. That would be good, I guess. Hmm? So I'll just continue with Raj for now. Yeah. Chalo. Bye. Hey Raj. So let me continue. Ruchi would be like her internet connection is really not perfect. So if you can,
Okay,
so just I'll just move on. So if you can see over here, you can see that this particular object dot zip, it is still there into its own property. It really needs, it need not to be there. It should be inside the prototype. You can just put down the mic off, Raj.
okay.
If you have any doubt in between, you can just tell me. Okay, so now what I have to do now, I cannot put this function over here, because each and every time I instantiate the coffee, new memory would be assigned to this function. What I will do is, first of all, I'll just create like beverage dot prototype. Okay, dot drink, and drink would be nothing but the same function which I have written over here, like this, and I'll just put it over here. Okay, I'll just remove this stuff out. At the same time, I'm going to do the same with coffee as well. Prototype dot sip is nothing but this particular of function, and I'm going to just remove this sip out. So now everything look proper, but still the inheritance piece, uh, prototype, but still now everything looks really proper. If you can see, there is type mocha, and there would be zip function inside the prototype, so that's cool, really cool. Now from where does the inheritance take place, and that is something which we have to really see. So what I'm going to do is, over here, before setting up the property, you know before setting up the property like this, okay, what I am really going to do is, I am going to use a beverage class. Okay, and I'm going to use a call method on this, and this call method is nothing but, what it will do, it will just bring all the methods, like, and what will it take, it first thing is nothing but this. Now this is nothing but the current the current, this particular, this where I am, I'm inserting my data members and member functions of coffee. I'm passing this to beverage, and I am asking and I'm asking it, you know uh, and what all things does it expect from me? Beverage accepts a name and a temperature. So it is nothing but a coffee, which you can hard code directly, and coffee is always going to be hot. Okay, and this is how the inheritance takes place. At the same time, if you can see, there are some properties which are, now this particular line, it will take care of all the properties all the own properties, but not the properties which are there present in your prototype. So for that, what you have to do is, for that you have to just go down to, you have to go down to copy dot prototype, and this copy dot prototype should always be something like, object dot create, the way I show you before, object dot create, and it would be nothing but beverage dot prototype. And yes, and if you can, now if you can see my data object, you can see that I am getting a type called Muka. At the same time, I am getting all the properties of my parent, that is nothing but temperature and name. And now you can also see this particular thing is having SIP inside it. At the same time, I am also inheriting its prototype chain. This is nothing but setting the prototype chain, I would say, nothing but setting the prototype chain here. And I'll just put a comment over here, this will not take care of, you know of the prototype properties, if any. Okay, I'll just put a question mark over here. And now you can see inside this particular prototype there is nothing but drink as well. So that means it's completely fine. Now I'll access nothing but a drink which is not the which was not there with the coffee. So what I'm going to do is coffee dot drink. If I just access it, you can see what it is. Okay, so now, and now it is just saying me, I should not console dot log it out. I'll just say mocha dot drink. So now drink, it would just say I am drinking coffee and it is very hot. Okay, so this is nothing but I'm talking about inheritance, because mocha is accessing the property which is not its own property, but it is getting inherited from its parent, and that is nothing but the beverage, right? So Raj, do you have any problem in understanding this?
No, brother. No, I can understand.
Okay, cool, very much. So let me just move on to the next pattern. Okay, so inheritance pattern is, again, it is much more clear to you. Okay, let me just shut this thing out, and there would be one more pattern, some more pattern over there. I can save it like mixin.js. Okay, I've create js. I can come to the .html. I can just copy this stuff out. I can just put it, and I can say just mixin.js. If you can see over here mixin, I'll just try to put a alert over here, and I will show you, should be good to go. Cool. So actually what mixing is really all about, okay, so mixing is nothing, it is all about code reusability. Like, for example, if at all there are two classes called person and dog, okay, there are some things which are really common to both of these classes. Like you know like you can say a person can a person can run and walk. At the same time, a dog also can run and walk, correct? So if at all I go and create, every time I just go and write the walk and run functions differently for all the interfaces which are really conforming to this particular actions, it would be really waste of time. And at the same time, it is not writing the code in the most robust manner, or in the most flexible manner. So how you can write it is by you writing a mixins. Now let's just try to see how can we achieve it. So like, for example, I'll just start and writing something called person over here, and the person is always going to have something called name, and this is nothing but this dot name is equals to name. Okay, and then I will just go over here as function, and the function would be nothing but dog, and this particular dog would be nothing but a name. Again, I would say this dot name, the name of the dog would be nothing but a name. Now I'll just create a collection of you of actions which are common to dog and person both. Let me see how I can do that. If I just do something called mover, okay. Now mover is nothing but an object. Now first is nothing but run. So run is something which even a dog can do and even a man can do or a person can do. So I'll just equate to a function and I'll just write it console.log. You know, I'll say this dot name and I'll say is running. Then I would say nothing but a walk. And I would say function, and then I would say console dot log, and this dot name is walking. Now it is going to be super. So now this is now let me write one thing which is only done by a person and but not by a dog. Like for arithmetic can be done by a dog and not by a person but not by a dog. So like for example, I say add and I say a function over here, and this particular function can be just write it like console this dot name, you know, is adding. Okay, so now just let me write, you know, a logic over here, okay, which would take care of everything which I was talking over here. Like it will add, let me see, like for example what I am really going to do is, okay, something what I'm going to write is, now for example I'm going to say person obj, okay. I'm going to say that extend my person object, that is new dot person, okay, with mover capabilities and also arithmetic capabilities, okay. And this person would be nothing but Gorang. At the same time I also want to write a dog object, and this dog object would be nothing but I want to extend my dog object, which is going to be Tommy, and it can only be used as a mover object. You can extend mover but it cannot do arithmetic, okay. And at the end of the day I'll just console.log, and I will just say dog object dot run, because run would be present inside your mover object also. So now if you can see, everything is much more clearer apart from this particular extend. So let me just write the implementation for this particular extend function. How I can do this is where extend, okay. Now this particular extend is nothing going to be a function, and this function is something like I'll just check if at all, you know, if my first argument, right, if at all there is no first argument, like over here for example this is my argument 0, this is my argument 1, argument 2. So supposingly if at all I am having no argument to be extended, I will just return this particular block. I am not going to do anything from here. I'll say I'll just return. Then I'll do it, I'll just take my target, okay, and that my target is always going to be the first one, my first argument. So what I'll do it, I'll just go arguments, you know, and I'll say it as 0, okay. Now I'll just start writing a for loop. Okay, for loop. Now for loop, how I'm going to write is I'm going to say start my for loop from first, from 1. Okay, and then say my ll variable is nothing but, you know, arguments dot length. Okay, so this is my first thing. Then I'll just check, like, if my l is equals to, my first is equal to my length, and then I plus plus. Okay, so this is very much simple. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to loop over the argument 1 to whatever argument I'm getting, to the length. It is completely there. Okay, so how I'm going to do it is, over here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a source over here. I'll just keep an, so argument source is nothing going to be my first iteration, that is nothing but the first I value. And then again I'll start creating a for loop over here, variable, drop in source. And then I'll just say if, if my target, okay, target is nothing but what I have used above. If target dot property, okay, is present, and my source is having its own property, his own property as props, at that particular time, just add that particular property to my target. So what is nothing but my target dot prop is equals to source dot prop. Okay, now this is, and at the end of everything just return nothing but the target. Let me see what really happens if I just, okay, so if you can see, I am just, if you can see, I have just see the dog object. I'm getting that Tommy is running. That means whatever logic I've written over here, it is absolutely correct. So let me just go and console.log everything. Okay, I'll just go console.log. Okay, and I'll just say console.log. I'll put a person object here, and I'll be use a dog object here. So if you can see that my person object is having running, walking as well as addition, but my dog is having only running and walking. Okay, so if I just go and say that dog and do add, it is not possible because I have not created a mixin for it. Something like this, it is going to show me error. Add is not a function for this particular object. Okay, so this is how a mixin data type, a mixin is created, so that everything works very much fine. Now this particular extended, it is jQuery, has its own API to do the same. So that is nothing but jQuery.extend. So I have just written my own way of writing the stuff out. You can, if at all I was using jQuery, I could have directly used jQuery.extend, but this is nothing but a simple example of how you can do it on your own. So is it clear, Raj? Very nice. Let's move on, you know to the next thing, and that is nothing but decorators. Okay, yeah, decorators. So decorators are also, it is nothing but a design pattern. So I'll just create a new file, I'll save it, and it is nothing but decorator.js. Okay, and over here I'll just put an alert just to see whether steps are good. and I'll just add it. Mixins and decorators. Just copy this file out, and I'll just see the decorators. Yes, so everything is really fine for me. Okay, so I am just keeping all the code which I have returned for you guys, so that you guys can have a look at it later whenever you want to. Okay, so now actually what are really decorators, right? Like for example, you know, for example, there can be something like, supposingly you are having something called a beverage, and a beverage is extended, like, a beverage is the base class of something called coffee, and this particular coffee is having something called as cost. So the base cost of any beverage which is of a type coffee is having rupees 10. But when, you know but when there can be different modulations to any of a coffee, right? So it can be like coffee can be a small, so if at all the coffee is small, you have to just cut down the cost by, you know rupees 1. So if at all, so the base price of my beverage is nothing but 10. So my coffee would be of cost maybe 9 rupees, because I'm just cutting, if I'm asking it for a small cup, so it would be minus 1, 10 minus 1, 9. Supposingly, if you want more sugar to your coffee, at that particular time I'm going to add some more amount to the base of the cost, and that is nothing but 5 rupees. And then we can just see that, okay, what all things are added. Okay, I want a coffee, it was of 10 rupees, you want then small, okay, then I'll just deduct rupees 1 from your coffee, that is 9, and then I'll just add 5 rupees, and then it would be nothing but 14 rupees. So if at all you're having a coffee small with sugar, it would cost you 14 rupees. So all these things, it looks very, very complex. So but it can be achieved by writing some decorators to your class, and let us see how we can really achieve this particular thing. Okay, uh, I'll just start writing with a, something called, beverage a beverage class, and nothing that is nothing but a function, and this is nothing but this, it would be having something called underscore cost, and that would be 10. So the base cost of any of the beverage which I'm going to sell, it is nothing, it is going to be having something called cost. At the same time, I'll be adding a prototype, a prototype member function called cost, and this particular cost is going to be having some functions, and this function is going to return me something like this dot underscore cost. Okay, this is simple, this is very much simple. Okay, so now what I am really, going to do is, I am going to create one more function, one more class called as, you know I'm just going to create a decorator for my beverage. So I'll just creating decorator for my beverage class. How am I going to do that? I'm just going to do beverage decorator, and it would be nothing but, function, and this particular function is going to be having a beverage reference, like you can say a beverage, right? At the same time, the way how we had set the inheritance in, you know so it is going to be beverage dot call, and it is just going to be this. Okay, I'm not going to do anything else, because I just wanted all my cost to be part of my beverage decorator. And then moving ahead, I'll just say this dot, you know beverage is equals to nothing but the beverage which you have passed to me. Okay, so now this particular decorator is also would also be having some prototype, As you know, the parent which I am talking about, the parent of decorator, beverage decorator, is having some prototype property. So we also need to set a prototype chain. So how I can set it? So I can just say, beverage decorator dot prototype is equals to ob, ob object dot create. It is the same thing which we had done before. Beverage dot prototype. So this is nothing but setting prototype chain. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do add, you know, prototype dot cost. Over here I'm just going to write my own prototype function for prototype beverage prototype decorator, and that is just going to return me something like this underscore minus cost underscore cost plus whatever cost which is there at the parent plus this dot beverage dot cost. That means what beverage you are passing me over here, you are just going to add it like this. Okay, so now till now it is very much clear. Now just let's just start writing decorators for coffee. So I will just say decorators. Okay, and I will say, when if at all I want a coffee with small variant, so I would just say small is equals to nothing but a function, and that function is nothing but beverage, you know and it is nothing but beverage decorator dot call, and this beverage decorator dot call would be like this. And also the beverage decorator also needs something like a beverage instance. So my small would always be having a beverage instance. I'll just send this particular beverage to my beverage decorator, and again if at all I want to buy a small coffee, I can put the cost is equals to -1. Okay, that means whatever is going to be my entire cost, I'm just going to subtract it by 1. So if at all tomorrow my base cost is 15, I am going to sell my small coffee for 14 rupees. So as of now I'm going to sell my coffee for 9 rupees. So again, as you can see, my parent beverage decorator is having some prototype functions. I need to set the prototype chain over here, and it is very much simple. I am just going to do prototype is equals to, you know object dot create, and I'm just going to say beverage decorator dot prototype. Again I'm just going to say setting prototype chain here. Okay, now just move ahead. I will go and create something for sugar as well. What is going to be the sugar? So the sugar is also going to be like beverage, and again the same thing. I'll just copy this particular thing out, I'll paste it, and my if at all I'm asking uh, for for more sugar, I'm going to add 5 rupees over here more. And then for the basic reason, I am again inheriting from the beverage decorator class, I'll just set the prototypical chain over here. So if you can say prototype, and you can say object dot create, and I would say beverage decorator dot okay prototype. I'll again say setting prototype chain. Okay, now it is much more clear. Now let me just create coffee objects by using the above decorators. How we can do is I can say coffee. My coffee is nothing but a part of new, and it is going to be something called beverage. Okay, my beverage accepts nothing. So now this would be having a cost of 10 rupees. Then I will say I'm going to update this particular thing by using something called new maybe small. So I want a small coffee. I'll pass this particular coffee object to my small decorator. I'll get the response with the updated value, like the first, the cost would be 10. It is nothing but the base cost. Over here the cost would be, you know would be 9. That is 10 minus 1 for small coffee. And then I can again use this particular coffee. I can use this to be as sugar. I want this to be a sugar. So now I would say that my cost would be 14, and that is nothing but 9 plus 5 for coffee with sugar. And let me just let me just coffee dot cost. Okay, my output you know should be 14. If I refresh it, okay, so now I have some errors over here, and that is line number 13, and it is nothing but this small typo. Again, it is line number 30, 37. Oh, is it 37 coffee? Okay, I'm not cost. It is nothing but cost. Okay, so where is my cost? Is it I'm doing what I'm doing over here? So I have, okay, I have not implemented my cost over here. Maybe what I can do is I'll just console.log it. I'll just console.log my cost. So that is it. So now if you can see, it is nothing but 14 rupees. So how it is happened? By creating a decorator, I'm using a small coffee and with sugar, and the explanation is completely written over here. So is there any doubt about it, Raj? I believe it is clear, right? Yeah, super. So moving ahead with, yeah, nothing, right? So moving ahead, now let us go with something called as module pattern. I'll move on and I'll just create a new JS file, and that is going to be something like module, and that is nothing but JS. And inside my this thing again, I'll just copy this stuff out. Okay, let me just go into my decorators, and I'll just remove this particular console.log. Okay, so that is fine. So I'll just state this. I'll just say module, just go to here, module.js. Okay, don't save it. I'll just go change it, and I'll just say hello. I would say yes, it should work. Super. So now I'll just write my modules over here. Okay, so let us take for an example, like if you want, like I want to create a module, or let us say I want to create something like a JavaScript object. Okay, a JavaScript object which would be I want to write a class or something like that, which would be having just a create function, and that particular create function will accept a tag name, and that particular tag name would be created inside the JavaScript, and also a new ID is generated. Okay, and it will just return that particular thing. So let me see how I can really achieve this. First of all, I will just write it something called the JavaScript object would be nothing but a DOM, and it would be having something called as, something method called create. Okay, and this particular create is nothing going to be a function over here, and this particular function would be, a function would be here, and it would be having something called, you know tag name. Okay, now this particular, tag name is something like where element is equals to document dot create element, and I can just put a tag name over here. Okay, and I'll just give it a new ID, and new ID would be nothing but this dot, you know generate ID, something like this, and then I would just say return element. Wow. So what have I written? So what whenever I'll just go and use, dom dot create create something, create a div, or maybe just go dom and just create, dom dot create a paragraph. This would just create a new JavaScript DOM, and you have to generate a new ID for it, and you have to just, you know just return this stuff. So for that, if you can see over here, there you have to you are I am trying to access something called generate ID, right? So if I can say, there is something called generate ID for this, and generate ID would be nothing but a function. Okay, which would return, re which would return nothing but an ID, like, custom ID, custom ID called, this dot counter, counter, and I am just going to increase this counter. So I just also need to initialize this particular counter somewhere. So where I'm going to do is, I'm also going to do is something like here, something like counter, and my counter would be nothing but 0. So now let me just go and console.log, something like dom dot, something like this maybe. I'll just go and just dump my code here, something like dom dot create. So now what I'm going to do is, I want to create two div elements, and it should be having a unique ID with respect to what logic I've written over. So I'll just refresh it. You can see, yes, I'm getting two IDs as an output, and I'm having two different div element with two IDs with different distinct IDs. So now supposingly, if at all one notorious guy comes out and he just go and set my, my counter is equals to cool. Okay, and then let me create some more IDs post this particular action. Let me see what happens. Oh wow. So if you can see, from after post this dom.counter equals to cool, you can see all my div is having a wrong IDs, because I am creating, I'm doing it, I'm a mathematical operation, and I'm assigning this counter as cool. So first of all, it is really not a great practice when your counter object is nothing but a private data member of your class. It should not be exposed outside. So it is very dangerous and it is not the best practice to do. So how to really deal with these kind of scenario. So I'll just command these things off, okay, this particular thing off, and I'll just write it over here. This is the wrong way to achieve the scenario. Okay, let me write the correct way. Okay, so I'll just write the correct way is by using modules, by creating a module, I can say, by creating a module. And how are we really going to create a module? So first of all, I would say something called DOM, and this DOM would be nothing but a function. Now this particular function is nothing but a self-calling function. Okay, so that means as soon as this function is there in the memory, I'm just calling it out. And how, what logic I'm going to write? I'm just going to write a counter, and I'm going to say counter is equals to nothing but 0, and I will say something called generate id, and this generate id would be nothing but you know a function, and this function would return me the same thing. I'll just copy this from here to here, and then post this I am going to just create something called underscore create, and again I'm going to write the same logic over here. Okay, I'm just going to copy and I'm going to just paste the stuff here, but at the same time you can see you have to not access it by this, because now it is not a property of an object. This is a global variable for this particular module, and this dot counter is also wrong. At the same time you have to just access it via something called counter, and then over here I'm going to return something. And what would be the returning? And the return is nothing but a create object, which I'm going to assign it to this particular underscore create. Okay, I'll just it should be nothing but underscore create. So now what I'm trying to do is I've created a closure. So this is also called as closures. So I'll just write it down over here, closures. Okay, I'll also write down the closure over here. There is a counter wheres, and here I'm just exposing this particular method out here. So if you can see, when I refresh this particular page, now are you able to see? Still, I was not able. This particular line was written, but my logic did not break. It worked like a charm. Why is that? Because at the end of the day, when I put a debugger here, over here, okay, let me see what DOM has it. So when you say, so my DOM is having only create function, it doesn't have something called counter to obfuscate in between, and the leak of memory and data hiding is taken for granted. This would never happen. So actually the modules is also something which would help you to create a data mod like data hiding. This is how you can create a module. So are you really, I did you understand it, Raj? Why module is created and what is the basic intent of it? Raj? Okay, so okay, so I'll just console.log. I'll just put these things on mute. And moving ahead, let's just see something which is very much, that is nothing but pub sub mechanism. There is nothing but subscribe, publish, and subscribe mechanism. when I say, you know, when I say map, so what I'll do is I'll just create a pubsub.js. Okay, I'll just put hello over here as, as D maybe, which would be much more helpful for me to, use this things up. If I just copy the things out, if I paste it, I'll just use pub cp.js, and let me see. Okay, I'm still good to go. So what is this about, uh, PubSub? So PubSub is nothing but publish and subscribe mechanism, which is much more the best way of, of subscribing to an event. For example, after some kind of event which is happening on the screen, if at all there are a lot of places on the screen on your web application wherein after an event there are n number of things which gets, triggered, and things are to be done. You have to just write a PubSub, design pattern. So how can you do that? Like, for example, I'll just write something called PubSub, and then I would just create it as a module, like how we had done before, and then it would be nothing but a self-calling module. And then how I'm going to do is nothing but a collection. The collection would be nothing but an array, and I'll just write something called like subscribe. This is nothing but a subscribe, and then I'll just say function, and that particular function is would be nothing but, key and function. And this particular function would be nothing but collection. I'll just, if at all anyone is subscribing for the collection, I would just use that particular key, and I'll just keep the function reference with me. Okay, moving ahead in the same way, I also have to write something like, publish, something for publish. If you can see, I can go for function, you know and that particular function is nothing but key. At the same time, what I'll do is I'll just write a collection, and I'll access that particular key, and I will just call that particular function like this. I'll just write it, and then I'll again just return this particular module by something by its subsc subscribe, and this subscribe would nothing but subscribe, and there would be something called publish, and this would be nothing but underscore publish. And then moving ahead, okay, now this is done by my module. So now from like my PubSub is going to be, if at all I want to subscribe for an event, I say what event do I want. I want something called, page load. Okay, and then I'm going to give it a function for the reference, and I'll just console.log it out, and I'll just say it would be resulting me with some called key, and I'll just say my key, okay, is the event triggered. Okay, at the same time, I want to subscribe for one more, you know method called data loaded. Supposedly some Ajax call has happened and data has loaded post then, and then I would just say PubSub from somewhere, from my application, and I'll just say publish. And what should I publish? Then the data name should be this particular thing, like nothing but data loaded. So now if I just refresh this particular thing, let me see what you say. If you can see, yes, my PubSub, my sub, what whomsoever is has subscribed for this particular of method. If I just go and add over, I added it 4 times. The 4 times this particular the function would be there. Actually, I had to write this thing in a different way, but this is something which I would really like you guys to tell. This is nothing but a conceptual of method of writing the same thing like subscribe. So if at all I'm using, like for example, I'm just creating, I'm so over here I have to just loop it down to a number of things. Like for example, now over here what has happened, it for my subscribe, okay, I am creating a key out of here, I am just assigning it. So rather than that, what I can really do is, okay, I can I can just check over here if, if collection dot key, if it is not present, just create an array with respect to this particular key. So if you can see, I'll just create an empty array, and then, you know that's it. And then from array dot key, okay, dot key is an dot push the function rather than, just creating it. Let me see whether it counts. Okay, so it say is not a function, that key is not a function. Okay, so for here also what you have to do is, I'll just map it through the follower. Let me just write a for loop. Okay, a for loop would be nothing but where I is equals to 0, I is less than equals to, something like collection dot length, and I plus 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 plus. And what I would do over here is I will just go and, you know I'll just say collection of I, okay, so I would just say collection of key over here, that would be the length, and then I would just say collection dot key with, collection of key with key, for example. Collection dot key is, let me see what error is showing. It is showing collection dot key is key. Let me just see what wrong I am doing over here. And okay, I'll just see like debugger. So let me see what happens. So if I just see over here, you can see the key is nothing but data loaded, and inside my collection, well, if I go and try to add a watch, I can see something lol, you know collection. Okay, so the collection is nothing but, page loaded. So collection dot page loaded is having one key and this thing. So that is completely fine over here, guys. What you can do is, okay, so I'll just, you know I is equals to 0, I is less than equals to 0, and that is, I am trying to do it with, okay, so what you can do is, so now is it, I don't know what's happening now. If I can just console dot log, console dot log dot length or something like this. Okay, I'll just go over here and I'll see what, okay, okay, so I'm again missed out something called collection here. So I'll just do this thing off, and I would say that my collection and my key is nothing but an array, length. So length is going to be, you know length is going to be what, it is nothing but 1, and that is completely correct. And then what I'm going to do is, over here I'm just going to see whether it comes. Yes, So collection of key is nothing but what? It is nothing but an object. Oh, so now this is what I'm really missing out here, guys. This is such a bad mistake. So collection of key, and it should be nothing but of I. So if you can see here, I can, you know, still okay. So there is nothing but data load is created over here, but it is still showing me an error. Okay, like for what is it? We just see if I is equals to 0. Okay, so now it is perfectly fine. It is not showing any errors for me as from now, at least. I just remove this thing, and now what I'll do is I'll just subscribe for this data load for more 3 times. So if you see, if I just, you know, you can see my console, it will be it will be triggered for 4 times more. In the same way, if at all I'm doing it for page load was subscribed only once, so that would be the reason it would be created only at once and not more than once. So this is all about the pub/sub design pattern. So thanks a lot, guys, for for this stuff. I guess, right. So I guess things are very much clear, and let us. Thanks a lot for attending JavaScript as that. So Raj, have you really understood the stuff?